people. Well, thank you for coming to our first inaugural event, the Career Focused Pedagogy, a Faculty Insights panel. Before we start, I would like to hand it over to STAR's director, Dr. Ellen Stein.
Thank you. Thank you, Catherine, and thank you for those that are here in person. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to panelists and guests that are virtual. We're happy to be able to do something hybrid. So it's really a pleasure to be able to have this kind of an occasion together. As you probably heard, or if you didn't, our chancellor recently shared out at his State of the College the importance of making sure all of our students succeed academically, but also that they succeed in terms of their career. And while traditionally career services that's our bread and butter, we know that 16,500 students are not walking into our doors to do one-on-one appointments, that it takes the whole village to be successful. And we also know that faculty and other staff have been doing excellent work. And if we could pool our resources together and share best practices, we can be even more successful in the work that we do with our students, and our students can be more successful. So that's what we're here to do. Thank you again for coming. This is a conversation and what we hope will be many, many more conversations together. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it back to our moderator, Catherine Law.
Thank you. It would be nice if I actually introduced myself, right? My name is Catherine Law. For those who are not familiar who I am, I also work at STAR with Clemente. I also teach for Zicklin. I teach the co-op program. So for today, what I'm going to do, because we have an amazing panelist here, and also we have another one, Sara, also joining us virtually. So if you're going to look, you can look at the various screens and also this person here. I'm going to have each individual introduce themselves and let us know what department you teach, and then I'll go into the questions. So I'll start to my right.
All right, good afternoon, Curtis Izen. I'm full-time at BCTC, and I also adjunct in the Zicklin School, in the CIS department, and I also teach at the School of Professional Studies in their business program, which is completely asynchronous online.
My name is Susanne Schropp. I am a adjunct faculty in the Fine and Performing Arts Department in Weizmann. I teach design production and have taught senior seminar in basic graphic design. And I'm in my 7th year of teaching.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Clemente Diaz. I'm one of the associate directors at the STAR Career Development Center. I'm also an adjunct faculty member in the psychology department, where I've been consistently teaching an undergraduate course in financial psychology. In addition to that, I also teach at the CUNY School of Professional Studies in their graduate program in industrial organizational psychology. And at this point, I think I'm going on to a decade teaching undergraduate and graduate courses in psychology.
And Sara?
Nice to meet you all. So I'm Sara Schmitt, and I teach in the Zicklin School at Baruch as well. I teach in the CIS department, and I teach systems analysis and design.
Great, thank you so much. As Dr. Stein mentioned, the new initiative is about career readiness. It's not just about STAR working and infusing that in with our students. It's also you individuals who work with the students. You see the students day in, day out. 14 weeks, that's a long time to know students. We see students at STAR, what, one-offs maybe? So now working together to help make these students better individuals. So we already found out where everyone is teaching. And let's go into the first, and let's get right to the heart of the question. Can you tell me, anyone can go first, why do you embed career readiness into your course? Don't be shy.
I'm happy to start. For me, given that I teach psychology courses, and all my degrees are in psychology. In essence, I was fed up of people constantly saying that students with a degree in psychology can't do anything after they graduate. And you hear it all the time with politicians and the media. You get a degree in psychology, you're going to be working at Chick-fil-A or something. So I was tired of that narrative. And that was one of the primary reasons that when I began teaching, I made it a concerted effort to make sure that I was preparing students in my courses, whether they were psychology majors or not, on how to leverage the science behind psychology into the world of work. Because at least in my profession, we know that the vast majority of students who major in psychology don't go to grad school. And they go into numerous different career occupations. So according to the American Psychological Association, it's over 80 different occupational categories that those with a BA in psychology go into. So, sky's the limit. So I always wanted to make sure that the psychology majors were well prepared to enter the workforce and leverage their degree. So it was a little selfish in my part. But nonetheless, that's why I always focus on career readiness into the curriculum.
And to chime in with a really similar story, since I was a poetry major and I have thankfully always been employed, but it has always been a weird path and it hasn't always been very linear. So I think it's really helpful to show students how the learnings in the classroom, including those that may not be obviously career oriented or related, can translate into meaningful work and can serve you early career, mid career, and later in your career. So a lot these are the number one questions that I get from students. It's always about how do I find a job? How do I find an internship? So anything you can do to tie some of the learnings to the real world, I think really helps them pay attention, stay engaged, and get the most out of classes.
So, being deeply rooted in the industry still, and also being on the hiring end at times, you very quickly see where students are lacking certain skills. And so therefore, like in the creative industry, it might be a little bit different than other industries, but a lot of it is hands-on knowledge. And then also in design, specifically problem solving. And the way I incorporate that and bring a bridge between college and the real world is through framing the assignments that we have in class so that they have a professional spin to it. And that's so far worked really well. Students are confused in the beginning because they're not used to this kind of feelings. Yeah. But in the end, years later, when they come back, I always get messages from them saying, "Oh, this really prepared me for the real world." So it's always nice to do.
Great. So very similar. I have over 40 years working in IT, and I've been fortunate many of those years working here at the college. And students quite often will come to me and ask questions related to technology simply because they know that I work here and I actually am engaged in that particular setting. So I've always taken my courses and tried to tie them into something that's out there in the industry. And all my assignments are related, something to do with current technology or the way the dynamics of the industry is shifting. So I always relate career readiness into my courses. And this has started, more than 15 years ago. I started this practice.
So this is great. The employers are always looking for these particular skills. So we know why we need to do this, but how do you do this? So how do you incorporate career readiness into your courses? Any examples?
Yeah, I can jump in. I think part of that question is also understanding what faculty are already doing, right? And I generally think that we don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel when we're incorporating career readiness into the curriculum. It's starting where we're at. Students are already developing skills in our courses. Now, that said, whether they are able to see the connection between their or course content and the world of work, that's a different story. So I think it starts off with being explicit. So articulating those relevant skills, those transferable skills on the syllabus, on every assignment, so that students can generally make that connection of, I am developing workplace skills in my classes. I've been teaching a very long time, so I'm not naive to the fact that most students probably do not read our syllabi. But nonetheless, it is the guiding document for all of our courses, right? So it should be clearly articulated on the syllabus. It should be introduced the very first day of class. Like these are and you could use the language or like frame it differently. These are the employer desired skills you're gaining in my class. And then reiterating it on every single assignment. On this particular assignment, you're developing your communication skills because you're doing X, Y, Z. You're developing your teamwork or collaboration skills because you're doing X, Y, Z. So it's not only defining the skill that they're gaining in my course, it's also providing them context as to how they're developing it. In addition to that, I leverage asynchronous job simulations that are developed by industry professionals, as long as it makes sense within the content that I'm teaching. Group projects where I have students work on a quote unquote real world problem and then provide evidence-based solutions to mitigate that problem. So they, in essence, serve as like consultants, and we frame it that way. Like you have been hired by the U.S. government to look at personal finance issues, like student loan debt, and then using what you've learned in the course, I want you to come up with possible solutions to this problem. And they have to be grounded in evidence because it's an academic course. And then they do a presentation as if the audience is the U.S. government who has contracted them. Those are just some examples of how I embed career readiness as my financial psychology class here at Baruch.
And I do something very similar. I also do a final project that is grounded in a real world situation where students need to create and design an application that will meet the needs of that specific situation. This year, we did something around New York State elections and digitizing them. How could we open up access and accessibility by potentially creating some kind of a software product to stop some of the gaps that we have in the process today? And so that challenged them to use all of the design and systems thinking skills that they learned throughout the course to put together a proposal. And then they also needed to go out and interview users and work in a group to do that. So all things that they can then use. And as part of that, I made sure that they all had to learn different software tools so that they could add those to their resume. The specific goal was to add at least 2 new software programs to your resume so that you could say, now I understand Figma. Now I understand Lucid. Now I understand some of these design and analysis tools. And I actually have something that I can talk about in an interview.
Well, going back to the Career Development Center, I had taught workshops for the Wall Street Career Program many years ago. And I would meet with the heads of these companies that would be interviewing the students when they'd get out of these firms. And I'd be asking them what was it that they needed in order to get the jobs. And basically, I learned a lot from meeting these, potential hires, because these are the people that were going to, know what it is that they need to know. So I took the information that they would tell me, whatever skills they needed in terms of Excel or whatever the application was, and incorporated that back into the classroom. But I didn't just say, let's learn this particular skill. What I did was I took the particular skill and I made it into assignment where I was their actual supervisor giving them that assignment. So I'd have a real name of a boss. The assignment would be done as if they were going to be submitting it to their boss for approval. And one of the things that I found was, they get the assignment completed, but I wasn't so sure that they really understood what they were doing. Were they getting it from someone else? Was somebody else doing it for them? And how are they going to be able to go on an interview and get that job when this is all they have? And they completely changed the whole dynamics. And about 12 years ago or so, I started using a program that's licensed here at CUNY, also VoiceThread. And for those that don't use VoiceThread and know what it is, it's a program that allows asynchronous communication through video, text, voice, presentations, and things like that. And for every one of my assignments, there is no discussion board. Everything is done verbally. So whenever they have an assignment that they complete, they must be able to explain it to their boss as if they were being interviewed. So what happens is they get so much more comfortable because now they're explaining what they did rather than just submitting it at 11 o'clock at night and clicking, I'm done. And what happens is they go on the interviews and they come back and say that they were asked specifically, give me an example of something that you did that related to this. And they're able to, knock it out because they did it, a couple of weeks before that. So that's one example. I have many more, but we'll go on.
All right, I'm also a big fan of VoiceThread, by the way, and I liked it so much that I actually became certified in the application. And especially when you deal with visual assignments, it's extremely helpful, especially for critique, but also discussing strategy, which is something that is not necessarily taught in design classes in general, not just in the CUNY system, but worldwide. But that's also an important component in the way the profession is going in the light of AI. So strategic thinking is becoming a skill that's moving to the top. And Clemente, you touched on something really important, which is communication with the students. Because when you start framing the assignments in a different way, students are used to, having their assignments delivered in a certain manner. And then suddenly there's this disruption and shakeup. And usually I get some pushback on that. But when I do explain the reasons behind it, people, or the students typically understand. And, since I am in graphic communications, that's something that they have to learn from their perspective as well. So that I found that tremendously helpful. And then also a person that I follow who's quite well known in the industry, Seth Godin. And he also keeps saying like, we need to really, teach students and children what to do when there are no instructions. So teaching them how to rely on what they know already and become problem solvers, as opposed to just following the steps that are required in an assignment.
Those are great ways of, how you incorporate this into your curriculum. Here's a follow-up question. When you did incorporate this is off the script, since you've incorporated these new, methods into your curriculum, have you seen a change in the, engagement with the students? The light bulb goes off. Does that make sense to them? Why you're giving them these particular assignments?
Yes, absolutely. And also one great way to have kind of a proof of concept moment. Last night I held a panel and I invited alumni and the career coach to speak to students, but I also opened it up to other group students. And, like the things that I'm saying in class is being shared from a different perspective from alumni who've been out there for 2 years or longer. And so that's tremendously helpful as well.
For my financial psychology class, I've definitely seen students have those aha moments. So another project that I have them work on is an informational interview. So they basically have to interview someone who combines psychology and personal finance within their profession. So it could be a financial advisor, financial planner, financial educator, financial therapist, etc. And I have found it interesting that the vast majority of even Zicklin students end up interviewing someone who's not in an area directly aligned with what their career goals are, because they're interested. Like it piqued something in them and they want to learn more. And oftentimes you'll have students like, hey, I never thought this as a potential career path, but it's something I'm willing to consider. Or you'll have those students who are adamant that, it's not something for me, but I can see the value in this profession in helping me with my own personal finance. Because one of my many goals for my class is not only helping students with their career and professional development, learning the content matter, obviously, but is also helping them with their own financial well-being. So that particular project, like, yes, they're learning about different professions, but it's also looking at professions that provide some kind of help to individuals in varying degrees, whether you're in financial crisis, so maybe a financial counselor, or you have kind of deep ingrained money issues and traumas, you need a financial therapist, or you're like well on your way to being successful and you want a financial planner to help you invest. So regardless, it always helps students at varying stages in their career path, as well as their own kind of financial journeys. So, and that's where, again, where I usually see that aha moment in that particular assignment.
And I think I've seen some good success too with integrating these strategies. Like last semester, especially, I had one student actually had been looking for a job for 2 years and then was interviewing actively throughout the class. And by the end, actually a couple weeks before the final, came up to me and said, I finally landed a job. And it was actually this project and some of the things I learned in this class that helped me get through that final interview. And so I shared that with the class and with their permission, and have done that in other classes too, and saying this results not guaranteed, but if you do this, if you pay attention, if you engage, you can do some remarkable things. And I've also had students fundraise and use a lot of the skills and strategies and tools and frameworks in the class to successfully raise money for a nonprofit or for a business enterprise. And those are I think important things to set the stage with, to share with students and help them understand you can actually use this now for the clubs you're in, for the work that you do, for internships. This stuff is meant to be used. So get out there and try it. And I make the assignments generally fairly lightweight so that they can get practice with the tools and get some confidence so that they can then go out and use it in places where they see it's applicable. And then we talk about it in class. If they actually have a real world application for it, I encourage them to speak up about that, because peer-to-peer sharing does a lot, in addition to just obviously the professor opining about something.
And I think to piggyback off what Sara said, as I mentioned earlier, I don't think you have to reinvent the wheel, right? Start where you're at, just elevate it a little bit further. So in addition to those skills objectives on the syllabus, on every assignment, I also provide students with language on Brightspace and on the syllabus on how they can leverage the projects that we have in our course on their resume or on an interview. So it's basically, you're already working on this project, I redirect them to the Start Career Development Center, but basically highlight this is how you can incorporate this or add this particular project on your resume to show that you have the relevant knowledge, skills, and abilities that a particular employer is looking for. And I have found that that's a very minimal effort on my part, but it has a huge impact on the students.
Great. Yeah. So one of the assignments that I have in my course is a term project, and they have to do a paper. And a quarter of that paper has to be interviewing somebody in that particular field or industry that has at least 5 years of experience that they could learn from. And what they do is they come back with a wealth of information from research, but the real, aha moment is the interview, because that's what they end up really taking away from them, is speaking to someone who's in the industry, and they could really ask the questions that they wouldn't be able to get from any journal or really just anything from, pieces of information that they would have in front of them. And then we take that entire project, and they actually end up doing another voice thread at the end of the course, which is a presentation of everything that they've learned and also the information that they have from that particular expert in the field. And one of the things I found is it's great that they understand the information and they had the interview, but being able to send it to N-1 number of people in the course, that's really where it starts to, see its, wealth. So everyone gets to do the presentation, and then the other people in the class are required to watch and also critique on a couple of other presentations. So it creates a very good round robin effect. So not only do they learn about their own industry or interest, but they're also able to learn about someone else's and some of the learning that went on when they were able to interview people as well. So I've gotten very good feedback on that, because it really creates something that you just wouldn't get from a typical research paper.
Right, I think the things that you do in your courses should be fun. It shouldn't be, oh, this is a research paper, I have to go to the library, or if they still go to the library nowadays. I mean, for example, for my course at Zicklin, I would give, it could be a bottle of water and there are 3 products. They would go research these products, and they would just researching the products. Why would I do that? It's like researching for a job, right?
Yeah.
You got, who's the company, who are the people interviewing me? Make it fun. It doesn't have to be really so academic. Go, I really hate this, and I don't know how I'm going to do this. It's about putting it together. It's communications. So here we have great examples of how we're putting this together. But what advice would you give to people who are not too sure in embedding career readiness into the curriculum? What would you tell them? How should they, or why should they?
I can jump in, and I think it's reiterating what I've already said, which is you don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? Start off with what you're comfortable with. Something as simple as a skills objective, again, minimal effort, but it has potentially high impact when it comes to a student's individual career development. Having information on how students can embed a project on their resume or their CV, minimal effort, huge impact. So I would say start small, right? And then kind of go from there. In addition to that, there are plenty of resources available here at Baruch College, whether it's the Start Career Development Center, the Office of Experiential and Community Engaged Learning, the Center for Teaching and Learning, the Writing Center. They can actually come into your classes and do a presentation on how to write a cover letter for your students, right? Alumni relations, in terms of connecting you with alumni within your particular discipline to share career insights, right? So starting where you're at, and then really taking advantage of the various campus stakeholders and the community that you have here. As our director, Ellen Stein, mentioned, it's a village, right? And it generally is that. We're all here ultimately to ensure that students are successful. So why not tap into other individuals who are doing it, your peer faculty, other stakeholders, et cetera, to make your lives ultimately easier?
want to add to that too, because I think one of the resources that I sort of have taken advantage of tangentially is the networks that we have and through Baruch and other previous employment and current employment. So I do a guest speaker series as part of my class, and it is outside of the classroom, but could easily be baked into class time as well. And I bring in speakers who can talk about some of the topics that we've just covered and how they apply in the work world, how they're actually using some of those design skills, how they're using business analytics and analysis skills in their jobs. And you can find a lot of really phenomenal speakers through, of course, your previous students who are now working, but also the alumni network, or even if you, you're out and actually adjuncting and you have another day job, bring in people that you work with who exemplify a lot of the things you're trying to reinforce. And I have the guest speakers kind of subtly and sometimes not so subtly reinforce and say, hey, these things are important. You need to get out and talk to people. You need to pay attention to these things. These are the skills you need. That will also help with the attention issue in the classroom too. When you hear people who have jobs, who might have jobs to offer and referrals, saying, this is what matters. This is the thing you need to acquire now.
Right, sure. So 100%, I piggyback on that as well. Oh, I lost my thought. So one thing I incorporate also is exposing students to networking, professional networking. I'm in a networking group, and a lot of it is also modeling. Like, how do we go about talking to people in a professional environment? I prepared them beforehand, what to expect. And then networking extends not just to the outside world, but also within the college. So I encourage networking among students and among faculty. And with students, like LinkedIn is still the #1 job website students hate it. I empathize with them. I said, I know it's a hated platform, but it's not a social media platform. It's a networking platform. So when you start explaining, that opens it up a little bit more. And lastly, every time I do have an event, like with a guest presenter or something, I open it up to other classes and other faculty in my department, because it's related, even though it might not be exactly on the subject that I teach, but there is some relation to it. And last night's panel was on, job search, landing internships, experiences from the field. So kind of doing more of a teamwork approach, I think is quite helpful. And speaking of teamwork, Star Career Center has been fantastic. Like suddenly, and I've done it since I began teaching, but suddenly when you have that extra support behind you, it's a little bit easier to put together different tools and how to integrate them into the curriculum. And I also recommend the certificates that you have. So I did them in the summer, and it's helpful. It's long. There's a lot to cover, but tremendously helpful if you don't know where to start.
I think those mutually beneficial collaborations are key, right? So Susanne had a panel yesterday. She reached out to me, hey, I'm having this panel for arts professionals. Make sure you share it out to kind of the broader Baruch community. I'll get information from our industry partners. I will share it back with her. Like, hey, there's this panel, there's this webinar, there are these series of events. Please share it with your students. So as you kind of create these mutually beneficial collaborations and networks, you share information, and that's another kind of simple thing to do. Sharing information with your students, right? If you find that is difficult to kind of actively embed it into your curriculum, I say it's not. We can talk and have conversations on how we can get that happening, but you can just post something on Brightspace. There's this event happening for natural science majors. There's this event happening for history majors. I encourage you to go. I'll give you some extra credit if you attend, right? Let's be honest, sometimes students need that extra kind of motivation and some sort of incentive. But nonetheless, it is another strategy that you can employ.
Yeah, I really think it's critical that we change the framework of our in-class type of modeling and start to think a little bit about how can we change direction and start to think about career readiness and what assignments can we change, even if it's a little bit, starting small. I think that it's our responsibility as instructors to do this, not just simply, have a few of us do it and carry the burden, so to speak, but have everyone have a chance to give it to all their students, because we're not covering all 20,000 students here. There are a lot of sections, a lot of classes that probably have no career readiness in there at all. But I think it's really important. That's the point I want to make. It's not even something that should be ignored anymore. It should be part of the course in some fashion. Even making it simple, for example, I invite students to connect with me on LinkedIn. I have a lot of articles on Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, cutting edge technology. It's on LinkedIn, even career postings about how AI may change the industry on LinkedIn. And I get responses from those students, wow, that was something I was interested in, or I can't believe it's happening in the health industry or things like that. So I think it's just important that we all, not only here, but the entire campus understands the importance of having a portion of every course connected in some way to career readiness for each semester.
Yeah, as a quick follow-up, I think we've alluded to this, but just in case it hasn't been very clear, career readiness is not just about helping a student develop a resume or prepare for interviews. That's a part of it, right? But it's big picture, right? How are we as faculty assisting students become professionals, developing skills, etiquette, right? When they're communicating with us or communicating with potential employers. So it's really big picture thinking. It's not just resumes and interviews, unless that's what you want it to be, and that's fine. But I think that that reframing goes a long way in terms of people's willingness or faculty's willingness to quote unquote take a career focused pedagogical approach to their teaching.
So as faculty members, research is a big part of everything that you do. Research has shown that there are three things that people don't have time for, right? It is lack of time, lack of know-how, lack of resources. So what is one piece of advice you would give to our members here and people online and why they should infuse career readiness or use the resources?
Well, I guess I'll highlight one thing that hasn't been explicitly highlighted, which is in terms of the perception that there are a lack of resources. There are plenty of resources. We live in the age of technology. There's Google, come on. That said, at the Start Career Development Center, and I'm biased because I developed the resource, we have a career-focused pedagogy brightspace page, which serves as a repository for resources, information, etc. Susanne and Curtis are both on the site. They can attest to it. At times it can be overwhelming, right? I think there are over 100 pieces of information on that site, but nonetheless, there are plenty of resources that we've curated for faculty that are either discipline specific, discipline agnostic, strategy related, etc. So the resources exist, right? In addition to that kind of Baruch specific tool, a lot of our professional associations have efforts on career readiness or career and professional development. So for me in particular, the American Psychological Association has an entire center for workforce studies that does research on graduates of psychology degrees at all levels. Where are they going? What skills do they have? Are they happy with their careers, etc. They have PowerPoints, they have guides, they have a list of skills that psychology majors should be developing. So apart from the Baruch or CUNY specific resources, look into your own professional associations. Are there any resources, pieces of information, individuals you can connect with that can help you strategize on how you can incorporate career readiness in, let's say, a philosophy class, in a history class that may not interfere with your primary objectives of, when it comes to the course contents, but that can complement it or enhance what you're already doing.
Also suggest to take a look in the spirit of taking a small step. Think about the part of your course or the work that you do that is the most painful, the most tedious, the least well received, something that's a pain point for you or for the class currently, and start there and attack that. So I started with the final project, which had always been a lot of effort, both for the students and for me, because they often had questions and felt they needed some kind of subject matter to ask about the topic area. So this semester, I built out a custom GPT model. I actually built out essentially a bot on ChatGPT, which I'm going to flip over to Copilot shortly. And it lets the students ask questions in like a safe environment to get answers. And they love engaging with the AI. They find it really interesting and helpful to learn. They love having access to that tool. And it also has taken a lot of the Q&A off of my plate. So that's been a win-win there, and showed them also how they could leverage building some kind of agentic AI to do something interesting and useful in a work-related area. So that may be another thing. I'm actually incidentally training the AI course for staff and faculty this Friday, and then in another 2 weeks. So we're actually going to work through building an agentic AI. If anyone's interested in that, so you can actually do it real time. But taking the time to just pick the thing that's causing you a lot of grief and a lot of extra effort, and then work on optimizing that first, because then you've created a win-win.
I'll just piggyback off of what was just said by Sara. So I teach Visual Basic in for Excel in part of the course, just a part. And that's something that a lot of students have challenges with. And for the last 10 years, it was Google, it was a lot of material out on the internet. And that was one of those things that no matter how much time you spend on it or how much resources, it's kind of overwhelming unless you're living in that type of environment doing programming all the time. So similarly, I developed a custom, chat through OpenAI that really just has all of the coursework for that particular module with the Excel VBA and its knowledge base. And then I had some videos that were created, and I basically just tied in those transcripts into the knowledge base. So now when students have questions, they get friendly answers, they get information that makes sense. And it's been probably the best experience I've had and the students have had in the 10 years or whatever of doing it, because they now have someone to ask. They get the answers. If they don't understand a particular instruction, they can put it into that particular chatbot and explain it to them really clearly. And then, it takes away, if they're just going to say, I'm going to cheat from it, I'm just going to type it in and get the answer, I'm just going to give it in. This is easy. This is the best thing that he ever did for me. Well, then comes the other piece where now they have to explain it to your boss with your authenticity, explain everything you have. If there's statements and they don't make sense, I'm going to know because you can't explain it. I've seen things that somebody's done that, you have to be doing this for 15 years programming to start using some of these features. If you can't explain it, you didn't do it.
So, and as a slight follow-up to what Sara and Curtis said, at the Career Development Center, we created a Microsoft Copilot chatbot for faculty. So if you're interested in embedding career readiness into your curriculum and you don't know how, you don't know what resources exist, you can go to this chatbot and ask it. They're already kind of developed prompts to help kind of guide your thinking. So that's an extra tool and resource that you have available to you. And at the same time, we're more than happy to have one-on-one conversations to strategize, look at your syllabus or syllabi, look at your assignments, and identify opportunities for career readiness. And I don't want to put anybody else on the spot, but I guarantee you, the other panelists would be more than willing to have a conversation with someone who's in their domain or not.
Yeah.
Just to kind of strategize, like, hey, this is what worked for me, this is what did it. These are some things you should take into consideration, and these are some other opportunities that maybe you haven't thought of. Right? Sometimes it's having those brief conversations that can make a world of difference in terms of your teaching and pedagogical approach ultimately.
I'm amazed how aligned we are. So
We're all different disciplines, right?
All different disciplines, exactly. So one thing I'm introducing in my course this semester, and we're doing it next week because it's for a specific project. I was fortunate enough to get a beta testing deck of something called the Mentor deck. Again, output by Seth Godin, but it's a card deck of a selected group of mentors that he put together. And he's working with Claude on this and developed an AI chatbot based on this mentor deck. You scan in a QR code, and based on the mentor that you picked, let's say Patty Smith is one of them, you can have a conversation with that mentor. They will ask you questions, and back and forth. So for faculty though, again, we're so spoiled now with AI. There's so many things, if we don't know where to go, where to start, that's like always a great way to start. But one really important thing is what helped me a lot is staying in touch with students after they leave and getting feedback. And that part gives me more insight than many of the other things. Because I can then, like, it helps me identify needs that then I can take back to the class and develop maybe an adjusted assignment around that.
Yeah, I just want to add, I'm fortunate I teach in the honors program, and almost all the students at some point are going on an interview or trying to get an internship or something like that. And a lot of them honestly can't make it to the class because they have an interview or an internship. Of all the classes I teach, the honors, at least one or two a week have something that they have to go to. And one of the things I always ask them is, I want to talk to you when you finish that interview. What was it that you were asked? And that really gives me a lot of information about what's out there. And I really take that and try to bring it back into the classroom. So hearing from people that are doing it, now, it beats anything that you might find in a book from, 7 years ago.
I would love to have some.
Yeah.
And I'll share a resource because what Susanne mentioned in terms of that, what was it, mentor?
Mentor Day.
Mentor
Mentor
Deck.
Deck, yeah.
There's an organization that we work with called Career Village that does something similar. So students will create an account and then they basically ask career-oriented questions. And we tell students, be as detailed, be as specific as feasibly possible. And then the platform will connect them with an industry professional in that area to answer the questions. Now, it's under the kind of guise of anonymity to protect everyone. So they don't know who the student is, they don't know who the professional, but the professional is vetted by the organization. And it's something that pretty much any faculty member can use, can potentially embed into their curriculum because they have like an educator resource on and assignments and so forth. Or it could be as simple as you're having a conversation with one of your students. They're like, hey, Professor so-and-so, they're confiding in you because they're pursuing the same discipline that you're in. I want some guidance in this area, but I don't want to go into academia. I want to go into industry, right? It could be one of those tools or resources you just share with a student that again can make a huge difference in terms of getting some industry perspective or some further insights on psychology, natural sciences as a career path, et cetera.
I actually joined.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I've given advice.
Oh, there we go.
But one thing I noticed, so one thing that's really important too is most people don't know how to ask the questions. And so, and that includes everyone in the room. Like we don't always know how to ask the right questions. So,
I would say it's kind of like our experience now with generative AI. How do you establish a prompt? How do you follow up? How do you make sure that you're articulating things so that you get the best input or output from that tool versus something very vague? You have to kind of keep on going back at it, right?
Yeah.
It's a skill that all of
It
us
is
and students have to
definitely-
develop at this point.
Yeah, it is, but
Yeah.
it's a fun skill. So I would say those of you who are a little bit scared of it, it's not a bad thing. It will sharpen your tools as well.
Yeah, I think we should add that the custom GPT that we're mentioning, there is no coding involved. It really is very user-friendly. You could really do it on your own, and it could be something personal that you're interested in. It doesn't have to be something academically that you can try. I think, Sara, and I think Clemente, you'll also agree, and I found out the hard way, if you're an instructor and you're trying to think about doing this for your class, as of now, you have to use the OpenAI one, not the Copilot one, simply because of the way the CUNY infrastructure is, that if you try to share it with students in Microsoft Copilot, it will not work. It only will work right now in OpenAI. CUNY's looking to change that, hopefully in March and April, once the students come over to what we have in the same tenant, so to speak, and then everyone will be able to share it. But for now, if you try, I found out the hard way, if you create it in Copilot, I don't see if you had the same experience, try to share with the students, it won't work.
Yeah, so I did drop some resources in the chat as well for the AI learning community if you do want to learn more about prompting techniques, building that custom model. But that is true right now. While Copilot is the official tool at CUNY, it isn't the instance is not shareable with students. So if you do want to build a tool that is more of like a search or a kind of like bot to help students with syllabus questions or with project related questions, it would have to be outside of that CUNY tenant. So that is the only thing that it makes it a little bit difficult. But it's coming or it's being worked on. So it's a great time to learn because you can still practice and figure it out. And there's a lot of resources happening, but there's not the pressure to necessarily create something that must be in the classroom yet. So use the fall and winter breaks wisely.
So it used to be who can get to the moon first, right? Now who can get to AI first? So yes, thank you so much, Sara, for putting those resources in the chat box for us. So here it goes into the next question. We're using AI to help us, right? It's our assistant, making things more efficient. But now, how are you helping your students or introducing AI to your students? Because the employers will want students who can use AI, not to do their job. They're not cheating, but we all have to be more efficient, more proficient. How are you introducing this technology to your students?
Well, I
Do this.
will.
Go ahead, you start.
I would say I will admit I can do a lot more. I haven't figured it out yet with respect to my particular course. What I've done thus far is part of that informational interview project. Students have to ask the professional how AI is impacting their profession. And again, we've seen a lot in terms of like AI being used to provide people with like personal finance advice and things like that. Is it gonna eliminate a job and so forth? So it's focused still more on kind of like the career sphere than anything else, but it's a starting point. And next semester I'll try to rework that and see how I can integrate it more. But for now, it's been more kind of integrated into the career readiness, impact on professions, and so forth.
I overhauled my classes this semester to infuse AI very heavily because it is the topic that students want to talk about. That said, I do caveat heavily with I believe we're at the peak of the hype cycle right now. I think we're in a bubble. It is absolutely about to burst. I am not bullish on investing in this. There's areas where AI is going to change things, but what it is going to be like is very similar to sort of blockchain and the decentralized ledger 7, 10 years ago. Where it's useful, it will just be quietly embedded and transparent, and where it is not useful, it will not be used. And we're starting to see some of that backlash. So I preface it with that and say, if it's useful, use it. If I catch you using it in a way that is obvious and not helpful or frustrating or it deserves to be called out, I will call you out on it. Just like the workforce, I said, if you use it to write emails, you use it to write proposals, you use it to write your resume, if I notice it and it bothers me, then you're gonna that I'll call you out. I'll let you know. I will reject that work. I won't use that question for that guest speaker, whatever it may look like. Those are the things that get your resume sent to a slush pile. So I'm very transparent with them about that. But if they use it and it's helpful and it makes their work better, great, because that's how this tool is going to be used. So most of my assignments are now designed so that students can use AI with them, and they are encouraged to use it, talk about it. I said the standard for assessment has gone up, though. If I notice that you've used AI to generate images and they don't look real and they don't have real words and characters in them, that doesn't pass. That wouldn't be something you could submit as real work that anyone would pay money for. And so I said, but if you use it because it helps you clean up a diagram and makes it look right and the information is fundamentally accurate, great. If all of you turn in the work that now looks identical because you all use ChatGPT to do it the same way, we're going to have an in-class conversation about that too. Because then it's like, all right, how would this actually play out? What do you want to be known as? Do you want that? Would you want to be noticed or known as a person who's just using AI to just generate something and not edit it? So we have those conversations. We do a lot of readings around AI. There's a lot of really great, both old and new classic texts and very new ones about ethics of AI and how to use it in a responsible way. And we work through it. And I challenge students to find what's comfortable for them and what's going to work for them.
So I've incorporated it in my classes as well. Because I encountered a lot of cheating, especially on the writing assignments. So I changed the whole structure of the assignment in such a way that all assignments in my class are research driven. So everything before we even start designing, there has to be a level of research that has to be done beforehand. Often I structure it, they have the steps, they get videos, they get items to read. And, you know, like, for example, we do it started out as a paper, but I turned it into an article that's then designed as a magazine spread. So students are, you know, tasked picking a designer and then doing research on them. And then one thing I started doing this year deliberately, rather than having them write a cleanly written piece, we do something called the FUD, the first ugly draft. And it shows me, in, you know, like genuinely what they've done, what they've learned, how they went about their research. And even as part of the FUD, you can very quickly tell if somebody used ChatGPT to write that. I tell them it has to be as ugly as possible. So there's that encouragement of being allowed to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And then after that, we plug it into ChatGPT and they can clean it up, and then they have to do a final edit based on that. And they submit all stages of the assignment. And it's worked really well. And then, of course, something like the mentor deck and fun things to do in it.
So I guess being a CIS instructor as well, I've incorporated heavily into the AI, and we do a lot of prompt engineering. We really try to ask what results you got from a particular prompt. And then if a student got something that maybe others didn't, we share what the prompt may have been. We look at some of the results that were given from prompts. We try that on a whole variety of different areas, from the concepts in the textbook to the actual coding and actual Excel. Could be just a simple word that we throw in, and we try to understand what company may be tied to this, how they may have used it in their industry, so on and so forth. So I encourage it, and I really find it as a learning platform for the students. We get a lot out of it.
I actually did an extra credit that I'm giving my students go up. It's a Dear Future Self, and you have to use all the platforms in AI, and you're going to compare each of the results that you get, write a summary of which one actually resonates with you, because it actually has personality, which is scary.
Yeah.
I have 5 different versions, and they are really scary. I'll tell you the results later, but if anyone wants to hear about that, my future self. So it is that amazing. So it's great that we're incorporating this. So I'm mindful of everyone's time. So let's wrap up and say, since the last, you submitted, you're writing for, this is how I embedded career readiness in the faculty blog. Have you introduced anything new that you haven't already told us or are thinking about introducing for the next semester?
Okay, so I'll start. So one thing that I will be doing this upcoming semester is with respect to that final project that students have to engage in, which again, they kind of look at a macro level personal finance issue, act as a consultant, provide evidence-based solutions, etc. But instead of having kind of like this fictitious government agency that they're consulting for, I'm actually going to be working with one of our community partners. And that community partner will be providing the class with prompts. They will use that prompt or mini case study to do the same exact presentation, but the prompt/case studies are actual issues that this organization is facing. And then students will do their presentations to that community partner as a way of hopefully mitigating or addressing the issues that that partner is having or experiencing. So I'm hoping that it will be successful, but I think it'll take that particular project to the next level because it will give them kind of industry insights. They'll get feedback from the employer. And they'll be able to not present to me, actually present to someone who knows may have jobs as well and who's looking to hire. And these students can present themselves as competent individuals in this particular sphere.
Right. I mean, ideally, I'm thinking, didn't mean, but like though is try to, if I can somehow take the core of Brightspace, the 14 weeks, the course outline, things like that, put it into some sort of a notebook or some sort of portfolio or some sort of GBT that the students will be able to query and ask against, rather than have to go into that file every time and look to see when things are due. Create actually 14 different sections, so to speak, which Copilot has and ChatGPT doesn't. So I have enough of these, little quadrants, and have one for the fourth. So just a thought, once Copilot becomes a little bit more transferable to our students, something I'd like to do so that it could be another repository outside of Brightspace.
This was great, and I would just, does anyone in the audience or people on Zoom, anyone have questions for our panelists? Burning questions? Let's see.
I say, in addition to questions, concerns, comments,
Yes.
hesitations, reservations.
I do have a couple. Hi, guys. I'm Dr. Santiago from the Natural Science Department. So one of the problems I have that might be me, but I don't know if you guys have the same thing. I'm a coordinator. I have 17 instructors under my team. We teach human biology. We teach 3 different subjects. Well, they're all under human biology. So we've got human biology lecture for non-majors, human biology lab for non-majors, and then the majors course. One of the issues I'm having is making sure that, and also it comes in 3 varieties, online, in-person, and hybrid. And then we also have size issues, which is actually the question I have for you. So we have classes that are 80 students to 85 students. We have classes that are 20 students. We have classes that are 40 students. So as leading my team, my goal is to try to incorporate a lot of what we're learning here into these courses. Have you found ways to better incorporate what you would like your students to learn from your assignments in large classes? Like, I would love to do everything that you guys are doing with like those smaller classes. It'd be a lot easier for me to manage it with a smaller class. I don't know how I can pull this off with my classes of 80 and then train my adjuncts to do the same and get the same quality out of their classes as I do.
The only thing that comes to mind, first and foremost, is again, kind of thinking of like minimal effort, skills objective, and kind of reiterating things. That could be across the
Yeah,
board.
still the stuff we got.
There is a tool that we use heavily in the career development space, and I use it in my financial psychology class called Forage. Forage has asynchronous job simulations that are designed by industry partners
Nice.
to give students an opportunity to kind of put themselves in the shoes of someone who does X. And then there's like an educator interface. You can see the work that the students are doing. You can have the reflections. Basically to make sure it aligns well with your course contents. I know for a fact they have a biology related simulation. So that might be a good potential fit for that particular class.
Absolutely.
That said, I would challenge every single academic department that outside of just encouraging individual faculty members to embed career readiness into the curriculum, develop a class that is required for all majors that focuses on career professional development. I know in the psychology department, that's something that we're going to be launching this upcoming year. It will be a mandatory psychology careers course, right? And I think once a department as a whole starts taking that leap, the rest becomes easier because you'll start, the department as a whole will begin identifying resources, tools that work for that particular discipline. So I think, yes, it starts small, individual faculty members and encouraging their chairs and the rest of their peers to do this kind of work, but big, at the end of the day, I do think it's a departmental thing as well.
Yeah.
Thing too is that it doesn't have to be to work or integration that requires you to validate it. It doesn't have to be something that's tested. Integrating this content can just be delivery as well. So you need to know this because this is how this plays out in the workforce. Some of it is integrating the why and explaining and providing context for why certain things are being covered or why you need to know it. And that doesn't require any sort of like verification afterwards that the students got it. It's just making sure that things are not disconnected from reality. So I think about the first step of career readiness or embedding it as just ensuring that there's a really cohesive narrative so that students know, okay, I get why this is being taught. I get why I have to care in this class. Like you've set the stage, you set the table, but it doesn't mean there needs to be an assignment. There needs to be work created for the instructor by any means.
And I think to piggyback off of that, given that you have different sizes, smaller classrooms, larger classrooms, leveraging Brightspace. Maybe you have a module that is consistent across all of those sections that focuses on careers in biology. right? And maybe even for those in-person classes, the lecturer or the faculty member doesn't necessarily have to do an entire lecture on careers in biology,
Yeah.
because maybe there's no time.
Exactly.
But there's that asynchronous component that students are expected to engage in, and maybe there's a quiz that kind of makes sure that they actually look at the resources.
Yeah, because I'm
Right,
also.
and that could be an easy ask in terms of, here's some asynchronous work you're gonna be doing as part of this in-person class, because let's be honest, before the whole asynchronous model and kind of COVID hit, students would come to our class, they had homework that they did outside of the classroom, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
We have an online tool that can help facilitate that.
Thank you.
Oh, go first.
Okay, so my name is Dr. Ian Dees. I'm teaching in the history department through Macaulay Honors Data Science program. So my background is in natural sciences, and just wanted to echo and highlight the point of keeping in touch with your students with regard to career development or career readiness, specifically because I had a story where one of my students from last year actually came back, saw me in the hallway this semester and told me that she was on the marketing team for the chancellor's launch of Community On and everything like that. And her pictures are on like throughout the subway, throughout the buses. And she asked me if I saw it. And I actually told her that I saw the launch, the advertisements, I think a few months earlier, but I was by myself and I was like, that person looks familiar. When she came in to tell me about it, and she saw that I know it's you. And so she was just happy. And so she just said, thanks for everything that I implemented with the course the year prior. And so I used that to share with my current students, and she shared her LinkedIn, all this stuff. And so it's just echoing the point of keeping in touch with your students, because it's like you won't really know what happens until they actually come back. And so I just encourage them, I'm not doing this for the money. Like anyone that teaches really don't do it for money. Their impact and significance that you have on the next generation. You want to share that?
I want to piggyback on that too. And then taking it a step further, like last night on my panel, I shared everybody's QR code to their LinkedIn profile, and everybody in the room could connect. And they were very, very interested. Like they all took it, and you're gonna find out who connected because you can see that. But still, I think that's a really important aspect of it. I totally agree.
And it's true, what we do, it takes time. I've taught co-op for 2 years, and I've just seen students come back and say, you know what, the final project research paper you gave us to do, I didn't like it so much, but you know what, it did help me do a presentation at work. And thank you so much. At that point, they're like, oh, I had to do this, why am I doing this? But they said it really, really helped them. So we have to be patient, just like you, all of a sudden, we see them plastered on, the public buses, right? So that's why we do, yes, for free, but it's because we want to put it back there to come back to us. And it's because with the students, they're the ones who talk to each other and tell them, see, this is what I did, you should too. The same way how faculty, everyone here, we should do the same thing, just be like our students, share the resources, talk to each other, we're here. Ellen, you had a question.
2 things. One is a shameless plug. Really, so you want to know what's happening with your students, right? And you may know their success stories, you may know what their recent achievements are. We don't always know, but we know you and your departments want to know, and it's going to become even more important with the big, beautiful bill and all this other stuff for us to know how our students are doing. So I just want to put a plug in there. You're going to see, our students are going to see that we're asking for data. If and when you know those things, please encourage your students to fill out their surveys. That way we can get you good information and we can track, and that would be extremely helpful. And then in light of the sharing information, and forgive me if you've said it, and it's probably on within your resources, but this is happening at Baruch, and we are doing a great job, and we are continuing to try to do even more, but this is also happening entirely CUNY-wide. So there is a website, the Faculty Career Connected Learning Resource Hub, that also shares out information. They've come to us to get our information. We just recently, the Career Services Directors, met earlier today, and we had faculty come to our meeting asking us for our best practices to share it out more widely. across CUNY so that we can all share with each other. I think CUNY's gotten a little bit better, like when we have a really good event, sharing it with colleagues at other schools. We want to be able to kind of facilitate that for faculty too, to share good information and practices. I mean, we're all too busy to reinvent every step of this thing, right? So you may want to reach out to your colleagues at another CUNY school in history or in whatever fine arts, you know, whatever it may be. But that hub, Faculty Career Connected Learning Resource Hub, may be useful to folks. In addition to our amazing website that, you know, on STAR that we've been collecting resources. Yeah.
Well, I think any other questions? Comments? Final words? Nope. Okay, well, I'm grateful for everyone coming and joining for us online as well. I know time is always precious, but it's about collaboration, it's about communication, it's about sharing. I think that's the biggest thing. We cannot be in silos anymore. The bottom line, it is about our students. We are here for our students. So let us be here, let us work together and use the resources together, because our students could be, you know, the next entrepreneur, the next person who may be running Baruch College. We don't know that. So we need to build that future generation. So thank you so much for our panelists. Thank you so much, Dr. Stein, and thank you all joining us online, and thank you everyone who is today.
I will be emailing you.
Yes.
Thank you, Sarah.
I will be getting Susanne.
Thanks, guys. Great to connect.
Bye.
Sarah.
Thank you.
Bye.
You probably stopped the recording. All right,